I'm going to be breaking this down into the 4 skills. So that'll be speaking, reading, writing, and listening. And we'll look at each part of those skills of how your students can improve with just some simple ideas. So let's take the first one, which is speaking. Very often students are very good at speaking, but they see it as more of a monologue. What they need to do is to remember, ask some questions. Other people, if they're in conversation, like to be asked questions. They like to talk about themselves. So get your students and remind them that it's not just about them talking, but get them to interact. So this isn't just an activity for the classroom, this is really essential for everyday life, where students need to be thinking more about asking questions about other people. Maybe it's they need some information or showing an interest in that other person. This is a really great way to get them thinking about just asking a few more questions. Beyond has some great activities for your students to use in class where they can practice this with their classmates of asking questions. Okay, now let's look at writing. I talked about aim, audience, and attention. Now this part of the writing that I'm going to talk about takes it one step further, which is where they have to plan the actual body and structure of their writing. So they'll be talking about their introduction, main body, and conclusion. Students enjoy writing, I think, quite often, but a little bit more of planning could help to make it much clearer and a nice flow with what they're writing about. And I found that with my students, just simply telling them, have you thought about what's your introduction, main body, and conclusion going to look like? And very often they'll take a step back and think, no, I haven't actually thought about that. You can also give them a little tip that very often, especially with academic writing, we'll be writing the main body first, then the conclusion, then we go back and write the introduction. And if we give them one more tip, which is we can include, tell them what you're going to tell them, which is your introduction, tell them, which is your main body, and then your conclusion is tell them what you've told them. Just a couple of very simple tips here that can improve the way that your students write with a clear, logical flow. For listening, a great thing I found to use with my students is the weather forecast. It's very easy to access something like this on the internet, and each clip is about 2 or 3 minutes long. Now, with the weather forecast, if you actually listen to the way a weather forecaster speaks or gives the weather forecast, they tell you what they're going to tell you, they tell you, and then they tell you what they've told you. Very much what I've said about in writing. So it's a very structured presentation that they're given, but it's spoken. So it's very much a crossover skill that can be used for writing and also for speaking as well. But for the listening point of view, it's a great short clip that students get visual help through all the symbols, and they can follow it very, very clearly with what the weather forecaster is telling them. So they've got a little bit of help, and it's just a quick way that you can use maybe once or twice a week if you've got regular lessons with them, or once a month, or get them doing it regularly so that they can hear different accents and get used to those little clips and get used to listening to authentic weather forecasts. So this is active listening skill for them, which is using real life situation because they really want to know what the weather's going to be like tomorrow, don't they? So moving on to reading, students often when they're reading want to read every single word, and they get hung up on one particular word and it stops them from reading everything. It's such a pity because it's all about enjoying the whole of what they're reading, whether it's an article or a book, and they find they're spending too much time referring to a dictionary, looking it up on the internet for those particular words that they get stuck on, rather than reading the whole of the paragraph or the whole of the context. And this can put them off reading. So an activity that you can try with them is in company, and this you'll see is where the sentence is given with a lot of vowels missing, And it just shows them and reinforces that you don't have to read absolutely everything that's on the page. We can understand so much with a lot of information missing. And I think this is a great way to start to encourage students to read more, to read everything, and try and understand the context of what the whole article or the whole piece that they're reading is about.